Hello there, and welcome to your first video critique. My name is Colin Blakely. I'm your instructor, and just wanted to introduce myself up at the top. How's it going? So the way that this is usually done, or at least the way I usually do it, is we're going to go over your images. First, just talk about them in terms of images, how they succeed as images. And then I'm going to go in and talk a little bit about how they fulfill the criteria of the assignment. Which this time around is the different tinting effects. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's talk about least successful and most successful, and we'll do it. So I'll make this right here go bye-bye, and we will start with the critiques. So starting here, bye. Oh, and we'll get rid of this too. And okay, so usually just for convenience, I just break them down into groups of 4, and this is just based on the order that people submitted their assignments. So this time around, the group is going to be Larry, Rachel, Montague, and Mitch. So let's start with Larry and see what he has for us today. Alright, so usually I just kind of quickly go through contact sheets, just briefly talk about ones that pop out to me. This I think is pretty interesting. Yeah, these sort of 2 lines that are bisecting the image in a sort of strange way. I think it's kind of the same thing going here. What I like about this, and I think maybe it's working slightly better here, is that they're really pretty close to those sort of imaginary rule of thirds lines that we use to compose things. So they can tend to be visually pleasing. And then this guy's head is almost right in that same spot. I would probably have used slightly less depth of field here just to kind of isolate him a little bit more from his background. But I do like those elements quite a bit. This guy is really interesting. Again, I would say probably slightly less depth of field on this too. I feel like you're probably kind of going for a bit of a, sort of more of an environment within the image. But I mean, this guy is definitely just on his own visually interesting enough, especially with this, that I think you probably could have, maybe just made less depth of field, sort of focus the viewer's attention more on him. And then well, I'm not going to even go into that. Sometimes a little fill flash can pop that, but the other thing is you can just take it into Photoshop and also lighten them a little bit too around in this area, sort of open up that shadow. Of the 3 shots, I think maybe I like this one the most, but I would slightly crop down in from the top, just to sort of bring him up a little bit higher within the frame. And yeah, you got I really like his expression there. He definitely looks like a very animated guy. You can almost hear the sort of probably fairly interesting, but also fairly riotous, loud, rackety kind of sound that this guy would produce. I can almost hear it in my mind as I'm looking at these pictures. You want to watch stuff like this, because our eyes naturally tend to jump to text like this. You definitely either want to, so again, shallower depth of field would kind of take care of that. I feel like that's pulling our focus slightly from this guy. On the other hand, I do really like, as he's turned sideways here, so what's happening with these 2 kind of almost like cowbells or something, I'm not sure what those are, but the way that you sort of have this weird sort of what was it, like radiating lines that are created by these 2, and then his fingers here, his hand. I like that visually on that sort of neutral background. I think that's a cool element. Ooh, this is also nice. The way that pennant is sort of leading you in here. This again is another one that could be a little tighter, sort of maybe sort of chop it right there, right at the edge of the Confederate flag, and then kind of chop in from the bottom, crop in there. Yeah, you definitely don't be afraid to fill up your frame with all these graphical elements. Or I should just say graphic elements. I think maybe graphical might be a made-up word, but I tend to use it a lot. So yeah, you're working with some pretty cool elements here. These sort of fair elements that definitely bring a lot of different things to mind. So let's take a look at your final 5 and see what that looks like. Go ahead and zoom out just a little bit here, and let's look at this. I'll tell you one thing that I like is you definitely caught him right at the right spot in terms of lighting. That light that's falling on his face is pretty nice, and his head is right above there. That's definitely a cool thing. Almost slightly disorienting because it almost looks like his head is like like sitting on top of this thing, if not for the fact that you kind of see his arms extending down there. I like a lot of the visual texture. It has like these different like sort of rough texture here, smooth texture here, sort of the texture of this metal. Again, I think I would probably crop this in slightly. I feel like your image is right here. Just maybe, like, I don't know that you need any, like, a lot of this stuff. I think you could probably, come straight across here, come right down here, just, just to this side of this arc here, and then come back there. And pretty much that is your picture. The other thing that doing that would do is it would sort of take him and put him in that upper, third, like that sort of imaginary quadrant, and put his head pretty much right there, which is where you want it. And again, I think you're using a lot of these sort of geographical, wow, I'm sorry, I'm really tired, geometric shapes really well as like framing devices. Like, I think that's a really kind of a cool framing device that you've used here. I think also that the tinting is, in some of these cases, working really well. Definitely there. The black and white, I think, is, again, what black and white effectively does is focus the viewer's attention in on sort of design elements, like composition, like geometric shapes, like pattern. This one's okay. I feel like, again, it could be slightly cropped in from the right side. Oh, that's cool. She's like feeding it in there. What does this machine do? I don't know, but I think that's interesting. It's like, I don't know. You feel free to tell me, Larry, in your in the comment what this machine does, because this is a very interesting machine. I have no idea what it does. I'm seeing a chute down here, and this thing, I'm not sure. But I'm curious. I'm definitely curious, and I think that's another thing that you have going for you, is you picked something that's very curious, sort of interesting element, and you've made the viewer curious. So I'd say overall, your most successful image is probably this one. Yeah. So I'd say overall, maybe, I would consider maybe, as you see these scenes, sort of, you shoot this one, right? You kind of step in, possibly turn 30, 40 degrees to your left, shoot it. Really kind of work those angles, get higher, get lower, near, far, farer. I don't think that's a word either. But I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. Because I think you have like all the elements, certainly like an image like this, like it just, just needs to be cropped a little bit, I think, to really kind of tighten it up. But you really have, I think, an eye for finding these interesting situations and sort of exploiting them to get good images out. So, let's move on next to Rachel's images. And, oh, it's almost like a theme going here. Okay, so, let's go ahead and check out, get rid of you. Now, there's a little bit, I'm probably going to end up just backing out here a little bit. There's slightly low res that's making it a little bit hard to look at, but just right off the bat, this is really interesting. I like the way that you almost completely filled the frame. Maybe there's a little bit of sky there and a little bit of street here, but yeah, you used your sort of the angle of this building fairly well. You know, these windows are sort of, they're interesting visual elements that really sort of make this, I guess, kind of compelling to look at. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm maybe spending a little bit too much time on these, on the contact sheets. I do like to go through. I think this is really well composed right here. Visually very interesting with the rust and sort of this kind of stark, you know, you have a lot of a really good use of negative space here, the sky around everything, to frame that up. And then, yeah, visual texture, very nice. This, I do want to talk about this for a second, because sometimes I think Dutch angles like this work really well. To me, this actually kind of has the effect of making it feel like it's tipping over. I don't know that that necessarily goes with what you're doing with this. I think that it's more, it wants to be more of a static image, and angling it like that is giving it a little bit more of a kinetic or of a motion feeling than you necessarily want with that. I like this in part because I like how you filled the frame with these elements and sort of gave it like a flattened, almost pattern look. And I like that quite a bit. I'm just kind of got those cut off there. This I think is nice. Visually, I like the repeated vertical lines and vertical elements that you're seeing in there. And you have a lot of really interesting visual textures, although the kind of low res on this contact sheet is making it hard to see. This I think is really interesting, really good use of depth of field, and I like these branches as sort of these visual elements, these lines that are kind of coming in from the left-hand side of the frame, and sort of they're just sort of visually interesting to see, kind of active in a way that I like. This I feel like is a little bit chaotic. I'd like to see this a little bit. I like this idea, but I think it needs to be a little bit more ordered than what I'm seeing here. Alright, so let's look at her final five. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out so we can see the whole image at once. This I actually think I like better as a black and white. I'm liking this visual element. I tend to be kind of biased. I do like things in black and white because it, you know, it does tend to focus the viewer's attention, as I said before, on graphic, sort of, you know, the graphic elements and some of the design elements, and then a lot of texture, things that I think this image has. Again, I would say something similar to what I said about the other old water tower image, and that the Dutch angle is not entirely working for me here. I think you do have some stuff like this that maybe it doesn't feel like it's going to tip over in the way that that other one did, but I think that you could make the same image without that angle, and it would be equally effective, if not more effective. Oh, we were just talking about that. I do think that the toning, I do really like the toning effect on this, although I kind of do want to see it just sort of normally framed. But I think that that little bit of, that almost completely desaturated, but still like a slight bit of color really does something nice here. It sort of gives you the impression of blue here, you know, sort of brown and rustiness here. Really like the visual texture again, because it's near black and white. You're definitely highlighting that. I like a lot of what's happening here. This I think is really interesting. Yeah, this is weird, but I like it. A lot of things I like, times I like things that are weird. Obviously, I like this in the original version. And while it's not a true cyanotype, because again, I think because of the color, like it doesn't exactly copy the look of the cyanotype, I do like the cyan on that image. I think it does something pretty interesting there. And this was actually an image that I liked. Now, a lot of people would sort of see this and think that it was incorrect, because, you know, there's a certain school of thought where, you know, if your building is, you know, if you don't correct the sort of slight curvature that you get with a, not quite wide angle, but, you know, the sort of way that if a building is not straight up and down in your image, that it's not right. And obviously, you know, for something like this, you could use like a view camera or like a tilt and shift lens on your camera in order to make those things straight. There's also ways in Photoshop. I'm not necessarily in that camp. I think that something like this can be really effective if it feels like it kind of has like a looming feeling, which you don't really get with, you know, just sort of straight, perfect, you know, lines and no, basically, lens distortion. I think this actually is kind of effective. I do, again, there's a lot of things that you're using before. There's visual texture. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. I'm liking the roughness of the bricks and some of the things happening here, and that sort of looming feeling. I think it kind of goes with this idea that this place looks slightly run down. Doesn't look abandoned because none of the windows are broken, but it looks like it doesn't get used a lot, I think, because of this. I think that works. So I'd say Rachel, probably best image, I think, is this one, just because I really like the toning effect. I'm not crazy about the angle, but some of the stuff in here is just really dynamite. This, I mean, I don't know, I've already talked about it, I'm just repeating myself, but I thought that was pretty nice. Alright, up next, let's look at Montague's work. Excuse me. Alright, okay. So, with these, just kind of jumped right into the final images. Now, there's more than 5 here. It looks like what he did was kind of did the same image with all the different, all 5 of the toning effects, and then also 5 images that have the same toning effect. So 5 different images with the same effect. In terms of images themselves, this is slightly blurry. So it could be a little sharper. I think the other thing is, as was kind of something similar to what I was saying to Larry's, I think that your actual image is this. This doesn't necessarily need to be like, it wouldn't necessarily need to be reshot. I think you could simply crop it. So, you know, kind of the top of your frame here, comes down here, goes back across there. One thing that's going to do is take them, kind of make them less centered and push them more up to that top third where it's more visually pleasing. And just some of the stuff here just isn't really, it's just kind of not doing anything visually. I think in a situation like this, you do want to make it fairly tight in on there. So yeah, I think that's, you know, in terms of the image itself, I think it's just that your actual image is right in here. And you want to make sure, you know, you want to make, at this point, you want to make things fairly tight. I think that what you would do here is, like, think of this as your, like, this is sort of your first impression, right? So you definitely shoot this shot, but I think then, like I was saying before, you take a couple steps closer, maybe a few steps to the right, so you frame up a little differently. You shoot again, you know, sort of work, you know, kind of get up a little higher, down a little lower, you know, sort of shift your perspective around. And I think, like, this is a scene, like, it's a fairly interesting scene, you know, like, you have some good action here. You just kind of need to work with how you frame it up, how you compose it, to really get the maximum mileage out of your thing. Now, this image I like quite a bit. I I still do think it could be slightly tighter, just because I kind of want to get rid of this here. What I like their expression, I like their pose, I like her jeans, like this texture on her jeans, and I think even this background has some pretty interesting stuff going on. Yeah, I do like this image quite a bit. This might be my favorite of the bunch. Just because you have a lot of pretty interesting elements happening here. I think, again, just needs to be tightened up just a little bit. So I just kind of like crop it so that this is not in there and kind of fill the frame with what's happening here. Her head is pretty much exactly in the right spot, right? Because you imagine that rule of thirds grid, it's kind of coming across here, it's coming down here, so it's in a visually pretty pleasing spot. I'm just kind of go a little tighter on that one. Nice moment though with the two of them. They both seem, they have pretty genuine expressions on their faces, which I'm enjoying. This guy, I would say, just simply less depth of field. I think everything else is working pretty well there. But again, kind of getting distracting stuff in the background. So yeah, just, go wide open on your aperture. If your lens will go to 1.8, do f1.8. If it'll go to 2.8, do 2. Whatever your lowest aperture is on this, or your most wide open aperture, then go ahead and use that. This one I kind of like, a little bit soft on the focus there. And this is pretty much what I'm talking about here. The background is suitably soft. Your depth of field is pretty much where you want it to be. You got some pretty interesting, I think this is a pretty cool graphic element, the way that that the sun is hitting this and making this sort of X here. I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, overall I would say I do think that this is the most effective for the reasons that I mentioned. And then last but not least, we have Mitch's images. Let's take a look here. Once again, we jumped into the, oops, go ahead and get rid of that. We jumped right into the final 5. And I thought this was a pretty nice image. I might get rid of him, just because I feel like these people's backs work pretty well as a framing device. She's nice and sharp, and because it's, ostensibly black and white. I mean, it looks maybe like it's a selenium because it's got that slight tint to it. But the black and white, or just call it monochromatic, color scheme of this image, again, sort of highlights the texture as we were talking about, and highlights some of the formal things. So I would probably, come in and just kind of chop in a little bit from the top, so put her head a little higher in the frame, and then crop in just to get rid of that guy. Or you could even probably just take this whole section and blur it, just so you're not pulling focus from her in this great graphic element of the bullhorn. Now this is kind of fun, funky, bizarre, definitely clearly fisheye, but I feel like that works. It's sort of, there's something about it that matches with kind of what he's doing, his action, the way that this sign is bent, sort of, I know, not bent, but like sort of curved like that. Like the fact that this is curved and that's curved sort of feels like it goes together. And because you put him fairly close to the center of the screen, he doesn't look distorted like a lot of the other stuff does. He's pretty much unaffected because he's pretty much dead center. Again, that's another one I think that I did look at his images, at your images, Mitch, within the contact sheet before, and this was one that I picked out, I thought was really effective. Again, it becomes more effective in sort of the black and white because you have, things like this are getting highlighted. I think this is a really cool graphic element. Obviously, you have the V for Vendetta association. And yeah, I think that really nice use of depth of field, really well composed. This is probably your most effective image, most successful image of this. Simply because you have a lot of, sort of the tonal things that are happening here, the texture of his hair. There's a lot of things that are really working pretty well there. Now, it's funny because this sort of has some of the same visual elements, but I feel like it's not working as well. I do like this idea of the fact that it's, the face on backwards. Like, I like that as an idea, but it doesn't have the, maybe because this is not as personalized as the other mask, or I don't know what, but it's just not, I don't think it's quite as effective as this, which I think is actually pretty, I think one of the better images I've seen for this assignment turned in this time around. So, and then last but not least, great use of depth of field once again. I like this person's face. It's a little bit contrasty, but and it's a little bit more blue than cyan for like a cyanotype. Having said that, I do really like the eyes, and the contrast is doing something really nice in some of these areas. So I'd say either that or this are probably your most effective images this time around. Pretty nicely done. Alright, so that's the end of our video critique. Each week, at this point, I give you a secret word, or I mean, not like a secret word, but I give you a word that you can post in response to the post that I leave with the link to this video. It just lets me know that you watched the thing all the way through to the end. So this time around, your word is going to be helicopter. So, below where I posted this link, just hit respond, and you can either simply write the word helicopter, or if you don't want everyone to know what the secret word is, you can sort of like work it into a sentence like, I don't know, my uncle Buck owns a helicopter. Whatever. Sometimes people come up with clever ones, and it makes me laugh, and then then I'm in a slightly better mood when I, record your grades. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying that if you are clever, you will get a better grade. Just saying, whatevs. Alright, well, guys, thanks for watching. Should be another video coming out within a day or two of this for your other photography assignment. So yeah, until then, thanks for watching, and yeah, keep up the show.